Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're stepping onto, well, a really unique TCG battlefield, the mythic fairway of Tee Legion. It's this place where golf isn't just golf, it's this epic duel, knights, dragons, ancient relics, the whole deal.
It really is a brilliant concept. You get all the strategic depth you'd expect from creature combat, but it's interwoven with, actual golf mechanics, grip, stance, tempo. They all translate directly into how the units work, their strengths, their weaknesses. It changes everything you think about when you hear dueling ground.
Absolutely. And our mission today, it's pretty focused. We're doing a deep dive specifically into the Warrior Legion, the ones in Crimson. They are all about pure aggression, raw power. They're really the definition of a high-tempo, high-hit damage, or HD kind of archetype, designed to just steamroll the opponent from the get-go.
Yeah, and if you really want to understand the engine of Tee Legion, how it all clicks together, the Warrior Legion is probably the perfect place to start. Their whole philosophy just lays bare how the game balances that extreme power with calculated risk and, crucially, tempo management.
Right.
They're the ones constantly pushing those core mechanics, especially the damage output stuff, right to the absolute edge.
So we're here to figure out how that aggression works, why it's so effective, or maybe more interestingly, what the potential cost, the catastrophic risk is for the player choosing that path.
Exactly.
Okay, let's start with the basics then, the sort of language of the game, the core stats.
Right.
Because for the Warrior, it seems like the priority is clear right away. Everything revolves around four main attributes. Yeah.
That's right. The stats themselves are universal across all legions, but how a legion prioritizes them, that defines its entire game plan. So first up, you've got GP, game points.
Okay.
Think of it as both your score and your health. Your knight, your main commander unit, starts with 9,000 GP.
Yeah.
If that hits 0, game over. Simple as that.
Got it. Score and health. Then we get into the combat stats, and this is where the Warrior really leans in, right? HD, hit to damage.
Precisely. HD is all about strike force, how hard your units actually hit. And the Warrior Legion, they crank this stat up as high as it'll go. They push their units into these, explosive damage ranges.
And the flip side of that is DG, Dragon Guard.
Yep, Dragon Guard. That's your unit's toughness, its defense, its resilience, how well it can take a hit. Warriors, well, they often trade DG for more HD.
Okay, makes sense. Power over defense.
Right.
And the last one, YDS, yards.
Yeah, yards, yeah. This one might seem simple, but it's incredibly strategic. YDS defines a dragon's distance identity. And crucially, this locks that dragon into a specific slot on the battlefield, the lance zone.
Locks it in. How so?
It dictates where on the course, or the board, that dragon has to operate. Its YDS value corresponds to a specific zone.
Ah, okay. So that YDS lock immediately sort of maps out the battlefield geography, which brings us to the actual zones of battle. You mentioned the knight's home base, the teeing ground.
Exactly. The teeing ground is where your knight sits. Your commander, the anchor for your whole strategy. They manage your GP pool, they hold your key relics, and they issue just one command each turn.
One command? Like what?
Usually strike, defend, or activate a relic ability. The knight is primarily a leader, directing the flow, managing resources. They're not really meant to get their hands dirty. They only take a personal swing, a strike, if the entire forward area, the lance zone, is completely empty of your dragons. It's a last resort.
Okay, so the knight hangs back, directs traffic, that puts all the focus on the lance zone. That's the real war zone then.
That's it. The lance zone is the dragon battleground. Think of it as your offensive line. It's made up of 8 distinct slots, and each one is defined by a specific yardage range, linked to the type of golf club it represents.
8 slots, so it's not just like short, medium, long.
Oh no, it's much more granular and really important for strategy. You've got the putter slot right at the front, 0 to 50 YDS. That's for your precision units, your short game specialists. Then you move up through the wedge slots, say 50 to 100, then 100 to 150 YDS. These often hold defensive or utility dragons. Then come the iron slots, maybe 150 to 220 YDS, kind of your mid-range control area.
Turn longer.
Yep. Then the wood slots, 220 up to 280 YDS. That's where you start seeing more power, bridging the gap.
And then the Warrior's Turf.
And then the big one, the driver 1W slot, anything 280 YDS and over. This zone is reserved for those massive distance, high HD powerhouses. For the Warriors, this means they're flaming dragons, which we'll definitely get into.
So that YDS to slot thing is rigid. A dragon has to be in the slot matching its current YDS.
Absolutely rigid. And here's a key strategic point. If a dragon's YDS gets changed mid-game, maybe by a relic or an ability, It stays physically in the slot it was deployed to, but it actually loses the ability to strike.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, until its YDS somehow gets back into the legal range for that specific zone it's occupying. So managing YDS isn't just about distance, it's about keeping your units active and fighting. It's this constantly shifting puzzle on the board.
That adds a whole layer of complexity. But you mentioned that aggression, especially warrior aggression, comes with a cost. Paid where?
Paid in the hazard zone. This is where the game's tension really spikes, where the gulf physics and the combat risk collide head-on.
The hazards, like bunkers and water.
Exactly. You've got 4 main ones: bunker, rough, water, and the dreaded OB out of bounds. Landing in these is often the direct result of a powerful swing going a bit wrong. Usually it's linked to rolling high on certain dice checks, typically rolls of 4, 5, or 6.
Okay, so what happens with each? A roll of 4.
A 4 often risks the bunker. That's usually the mildest penalty. Maybe a temporary hit to the dragon's DG or HD for a turn. A bit of a tax, but manageable.
And a 5.
A 5 generally risks the rough. That's tougher. Usually forces a mixed penalty. You might have to pay some GP from your knight, like a penalty stroke, and the dragon takes a stat cut. For a low DG unit like a Flame Wing, that GP cost plus a stat reduction, that starts to hurt.
Okay, getting spicy. What about a 6?
A 6 is where it gets really dangerous. That often risks water. The penalties here are severe, maybe cuts to both HD and DG, or sometimes worse, a tempo loss, where the dragon just can't act at all on its next turn. It's stuck.
Ouch. And then?
And then there's OB, out of bounds, the absolute graveyard. If a check sends a dragon OB, that card is immediately sealed. Gone. Irretrievable for the rest of the match.
Permanently gone.
For that game, yes. And for a legion like the Warriors, whose whole strategy involves massive, powerful swings, well, they're constantly flirting with those high-risk 4, 5, and 6 outcomes on their rolls. Every big attack is a potential one-way trip to a hazard. Their entire game is this kind of high-stakes balancing act on the edge of disaster.
Wow. Okay, so that sets the stage. Let's talk about the Warriors themselves then. Their identity. You mentioned Battle Crimson.
Yeah, Battle Crimson. It's this deep, almost blood-red color, hashtag B71C1C. It's their primary color, and it perfectly signals their whole aggressive intent. You see that color, you know what's coming.
And their symbol, the sigil.
Oh, the sigil is brilliant visual design. It's a cross driver and a sword set over a rising sun. It just screams raw strength. The sword representing battle momentum fused with the maximum power and distance potential of the Gulf driver. Their entire philosophy is right there in that image.
And the Warrior Knight, the leader, embodies this. High HD, forcing trays.
Yeah.
You mentioned GP attrition.
Exactly. GP attrition is a key concept for them. The Warrior Knight themselves might have decent HD for a knight, yes, but their main role is forcing the opponent to bleed GP.
How do they do that? Is it just by having high damage dragons?
That's the core of it. They issue commands that deploy and support those high HD Flame Wings. Imagine your opponent has a dragon facing down, say, 2000 HD from a Flame Wing strike. They might be forced to use their own Knight's command, maybe a defend action, and spend 500 their own GP just to cut that incoming damage in half and maybe keep their dragon alive for one more turn.
Ah, I see. So the warrior isn't just hitting the dragons, they're forcing the enemy knight to constantly spend their precious GP just to survive the onslaught.
Precisely. They systematically drain the opponent's resources, their stamina, their GP pool, through sheer, relentless HD pressure. The knight leads this charge with, an enthusiasm for applying that pressure.
And they issue one command per turn, but their main role is tempo management.
Tempo management, exactly. The knight decides, do I conserve my GP this turn, maybe play it safe? Or do I spend some GP right now to activate a powerful relic, push the advantage, and force the issue even harder? It's about controlling the pace of the game through those GP decisions.
Okay. And you said the knight only strikes if the board is empty. What happens then?
Right, it's a sign things have gone wrong if the knight has to swing personally. But if they do, their attacks usually target the opposing knight directly. It's mostly chip damage, maybe 200 to 500 GP per hit, something like that.
Still fits the GP attrition idea, though.
Absolutely. Even when forced onto the back foot, the warrior knight is still trying to wear down the opponent's core stamina, their GP total.
But the real heavy hitters, the engines of this HD assault, are the dragons, the flame wings.
The flame wings, yeah. These are fire element dragons, naturally drawn to forging drivers. They are built, just engineered, to dominate that D1W slot, the 280 plus yardage zone. They're the absolute embodiment of the aggressive warrior playstyle. Their motto might as well be, power is the first law of the Tee.
So what does that mean in practice? Massive swings.
Massive swings, huge attack buffs, explosive offensive potential. When a Flame Wing hits the board, you know the game's tempo is about to shift into high gear. They're designed to either win fast and decisively, or, well, crash and burn spectacularly.
That sounds volatile and all or nothing kind of deal.
Completely. And that style comes with really significant trade-offs baked in. Flame Wings inherently struggle with accuracy, meaning they're more prone to those risky dice rolls we talked about. And critically, they almost always have notoriously low Dragon Guard, DG.
Really low defense.
Often significantly lower than comparable dragons in other legions, yeah. Their visual design reflects this too. All fire red, #D, 3D2F2F, and orange, like smoldering embers. They look volatile because they are volatile. They're built to dish out damage, not to take it. Their survival relies on overwhelming the opponent before they get hit back.
Hang on though, if their DG is that low, isn't the Warrior Legion just hoping the opponent gets unlucky or makes mistakes before the Flame Wings just get wiped off the board? It sounds like they're playing against a ticking clock themselves.
That's actually a perfect way to put it. They absolutely operate under a severe tempo clock. Their main defense isn't high DG, it's prevention. They aim to prevent the opponent from ever setting up their own game plan by just burying them under so much HD pressure that the opponent has to react defensively, spending GP, losing dragons.
So offense is the best defense, literally.
Literally. If the opponent manages to stabilize, weather the initial storm, and start landing solid hits on a Flame Wing, yeah, that dragon is probably gone in 1 or 2 shots. The entire warrior strategy is a race. A race to get the opponent's GP to 0 before their own board presence collapses.
Which brings us back to those dice rolls. How exactly do they translate that flaming power into pressure? It's all about the rolls, isn't it?
It really is. The dice are where the risk meets the reward. Now, to understand how warriors gamble, we need to be clear about the 2 main roll systems in play. First, there's the universal yardage roll rule.
Okay.
This is the baseline roll that always happens when any dragon makes a strike. It uses the dragon's printed YDS stat and determines how much distance they actually gain on that shot, scaled with results like ace, eagle, birdie, par, bogey, all the way down to triple bogey. More YDS gained on better rolls, less or even negative on poor ones.
Right, standard distance check. But then there's the other one.
Then there's the shot shape roll module. This is a separate 1d6 roll, and it's designed to model the actual shape of the shot, the curves, the potential mishits, or even controlled precise plays. But here's the key. This shot shape roll only happens when a specific card, usually a relic or sometimes a dragon ability, explicitly calls for it.
So it's not automatic on every strike.
Not automatic. The relic card will often dictate what kind of shape you're attempting, like trying for a draw or risking a hook, and then you make the 1d6 roll to see if you succeeded and what the outcome is. The dragon's base stats then feed into the other roll, the yardage roll, for the distance part.
And the Warriors, they trigger this shot shape roll more often.
Way more often. Their relics, their playstyle, it's all geared towards deliberately forcing these shot shape rolls because they're hunting specific aggressive outcomes. They're looking for those moments of controlled error that can actually maximize their power output, even if it comes with risk.
Okay, so what are they looking for? What's a good outcome on that 1d6 shot shape roll?
Well, the clean, ideal outcome is rolling a 2, which represents a draw. Think of it as controlled power, a nice, clean strike shape. A roll of 2 gives you a straight plus 100 HD boost to the attack.
Nice, simple damage buff.
Simple, effective. Plus, it usually comes with a safe little plus 50 YDS bonus too. Pure efficiency, exactly what an aggressive deck wants.
But Warriors like risk, right? So they're looking for more.
They are, and that's where the hook 4 comes in. Rolling a 4 represents an overcurve to the left. You really went for it, maybe overcommitted to power and distance. The reward, a huge plus 150 YDS gain that could dramatically shift board position.
But there has to be a catch.
Oh yeah. The cost is instability. You take a nasty Monacted 100 DG penalty on the dragon, you gained a ton of ground, but now your dragon is significantly more fragile, exposed to a counterattack. It's pure aggressive exposure.
Okay, high risk, high reward. What happens when the risk doesn't pay off? The mishits.
That's where it gets painful, fast. Rolling a 5 results in a slice. Think of it as the mirror image of the hook, but bad. An uncontrolled overcurve to the right, often from overswinging. The result is purely negative. You lose 100 YDS, and the strike itself is weakened with a negative 100 HD penalty.
Ouch. For a unit built on HD, that's gotta sting.
It's a massive blow. Takes all the wind out of their sails for that attack.
And the worst outcome. a 6.
The absolute worst is rolling a 6, the shank. This is just a catastrophic mishit. The penalties are severe. You lose 150 YDS immediately, and it automatically triggers a mandatory hazard check.
Hazard check, that sounds bad. How does that work?
It means the knight controlling the dragon has to make another 1d6 roll right then and there. If this second roll comes up, odd a 1, 3, or 5, the dragon involved is instantly sent out of bounds. OB. Sealed. Gone.
50% chance of just losing the dragon permanently.
On that specific check, yes. If the second roll is even 2, 4, or 6, the dragon usually gets sent to water or maybe rough, which is still bad but potentially recoverable.
Wait a second. So a warrior knight, maybe in a tight spot, uses a relic to force a shot shape roll, gets unlucky, and rolls the shank 6, and then has a 50-50 shot of just poof, losing their big flaming forever. That sounds less like strategy and more like just chaos.
It definitely leans into chaos, but it actually fits the specific warrior philosophy, especially for certain knight variations, like the Slice Fang style warrior knight. These knights are built around these hazard gambits. They're willing to push risk onto their own dragons to try and maintain their overall tempo and pressure.
How does that work? Give me an example.
Okay, so the Slice Fang Knight is the ultimate gambler.
Yeah.
Let's say their dragon makes a strike roll, maybe just the standard yardage roll, not even a shot shape roll, and gets the worst outcome. A natural 6, which normally just means hazard. For most knights, that might mean water or rough. But the Slice Fang Knight has abilities that can modify this. Maybe their unique rule says if your dragon rolls a 6, it goes to water, and you must make an immediate hazard check roll.
The one with the 50% OB chance?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They force that secondary check, and if it comes up, odd, boom, the dragon is sealed OB.
Why would they want that risk?
It's about tempo and immediate resolution. The Slice Fang Knight might be thinking, okay, that dragon was probably going to get destroyed next turn anyway, or I need to clear this board space now to deploy something else, or even denying my opponent the satisfaction of destroying it is worth the risk. They are willing to sacrifice their own piece, accepting the OB seal for an immediate, albeit brutal, tempo gain or board state change. It's the highest risk calculation. Trade a threatened asset for an instant reset, maybe.
Wow, okay, that's intense. How does that compare to, say, the Monk Legion's approach?
Oh, the contrast is night and day. Look at the Monk Knight with the Iron Resolve style. If their dragon rolls that same catastrophic 6 on a strike, yes, the dragon still goes to a hazard. Big penalty. But the Iron Resolve Knight's special ability might trigger, instantly restoring maybe plus 100 GP back to the knight themselves.
So the dragon suffers, but the knight recovers.
Exactly. The Monk Knight prioritizes their own stamina, their endurance, their GP pool, over maybe saving that specific dragon or forcing immediate board chaos. They accept the punishment on the unit, but they regain composure, regain resources. It's a disciplined collapse versus a reckless gamble. The warrior spends GP to accelerate, the monk recovers GP to endure.
That's a really clear distinction. And underpinning all these specific outcomes, draw, hook, slice, shank, is still that basic universal yardage roll, right? The Flame Wings still need to perform well there too.
Absolutely fundamental. Those aggressive par 4 and especially the big par 5 Flame Wings, their whole purpose relies on consistently hitting those high percentage YDS rolls on the universal yardage. Check the aces, the eagles, the condors. They need to translate their massive printed YDS stat into actual overwhelming distance on the board.
Because if they're constantly just rolling par or bogey,
Then their high HD doesn't really matter as much because they aren't projecting force where it needs to be, and their low DG makes them sitting ducks. Their strength isn't just hitting hard, it's hitting hard from way down the fairway, demanding an answer immediately.
got it. So the dice rolls are central. What about the tools they use to influence those rolls or just generally push their aggressive strategy? The relics.
Right, relics are the strategic arsenal, and the Warrior Legion heavily favors two specific types that feed directly into their aggressive game plan: gear relics and technique relics.
Gear and technique, okay.
And what's really telling is that Warrior relics, almost without exception, anchor their effects around boosting HD and YDS, power and distance. They very rarely interact directly with the knight's GP pool in a positive way, like healing or buffing it. That's just not what a club or a swing technique does thematically.
Okay, so let's break down gear relics first. What are they?
Think of gear relics as the actual equipment, the tools. They're the physical swing shapers. You equip them directly onto one of your dragons, and they amplify that dragon's stats, primarily HD and YDS. It's like literally giving your dragon a better club, a flaming driver of valor or something that directly boosts the power number on the card.
So they enhance the dragon's raw potential.
Exactly. Raw output.
Yeah.
The sources are pretty clear that gear only manipulates the dragon's stats. It focuses on power, distance, maybe sometimes offers a bit of DG boost, but it cannot directly restore or manipulate the knight's GP.
Interesting. What about using gear for getting dragons out of hazards, like retrieval?
Gear can be used for hazard retrieval, yeah. Thematically, these represent using specialized clubs like wedges or maybe long irons to dig a unit out of the bunker or the rough. But there's a physical limitation here.
A cap. What kind of cap?
Retrieval gear generally can only pull out the smaller or mid-sized dragons. Think par 3s and par 4s, those massive par 5 bosses dragons. They're considered too big, too heavy, metaphorically speaking, for a standard tool-based retrieval. And even when gear retrieval works, it usually involves trade-offs. You get the dragon back onto the land zone, sure, but it might come back weakened, maybe with reduced HD or having lost some YDS potential. It's a slower, more costly re-entry into the fight compared to deploying it fresh.
That makes intuitive sense. You need more leverage for the big ones. So if gear is the tool, what are technique relics? You call them tactical bursts.
Yeah, techniques are different. They're not equipment. They represent instant maneuvers, high-impact one-shot plays. Think of them as activating a special swing style or risky tactical decision right now.
Okay. Do they also focus on HD and YDS?
Primarily, yes.
Yeah.
HD and YDS are still the main stats they influence. But here's the crucial difference. Using a technique relic often comes with a direct GP cost paid by the knight.
Ah, a penalty stroke.
Exactly. It's like taking a risky shot in golf that might cost you a penalty if it goes wrong. Techniques are all about changing the flow of the game immediately, sometimes regardless of whether the knight can comfortably afford that GP cost. It's about seizing the moment.
And this ties into the warrior's all-in kind of tempo push, especially with hazard retrieval.
This is the engine for their most extreme gambles. The hazard retrieval technique subclass.
Okay, what's special about these?
This is where the stakes get incredibly high. Technique relics are the only subclass of relic that can even attempt to retrieve those colossal par 5 boss dragons from the really severe hazards, like water.
Because losing a par 5 flaming is devastating for their strategy.
Absolutely crippling. Those boss dragons are often the centerpiece of the warrior's overwhelming HD output. If one gets stuck in water, the warrior knight has to consider trying to get it back, almost regardless of the risk, to keep their offensive pressure up.
But being a high-stakes technique, the risk must be huge.
Proportional to the reward, absolutely. These retrieval techniques come loaded with severe potential fail states. Most notably, they often carry a significant chance of resulting in an instant OB seal if the retrieval attempt fails, maybe linked to rolling poorly on that subsequent hazard check roll, like hitting that Shank 6 outcome again.
So you try to save your best dragon from the water, roll poorly, and instead, it's gone forever.
Precisely. It's the ultimate warrior statement. We cannot afford to leave our biggest guns sidelined, even if the rescue mission itself risks destroying it completely. It perfectly embodies that maximum risk for maximum reward philosophy, all or nothing.
It's really fascinating when you contrast that whole aggressive toolkit with, say, the Monk Legion again. You mentioned their relics focus elsewhere.
Yeah, the difference is stark. Warrior relics scream HD, YDS, accelerate the tempo, force the issue. Monk relics, particularly their specialized caddy relics, they anchor around DG and GP. Defense, recovery, stability, composure.
So different tools for different jobs.
Completely. While a warrior knight is using a high-cost technique, gambling on retrieving a par 5 from water and risking that OB seal, a monk knight might be using their caddy relic to safely pull a damaged par 4 out of the rough, maybe restoring its DG in the process, or even healing some of the knight's own GP. Monks invest relic slots in endurance and sustainability. Warriors invest them in immediate firepower and tempo bursts.
Okay, so we've broken down the tools, the philosophy, the risks. Looking at the big picture, what's the ultimate strategic advantage the Warrior Legion gets from all this? You said they force tempo.
That's the core of it, yeah. By constantly throwing massive HD numbers at the opponent, by taking those calculated risks for big YDS gains with things like the hook, the warrior fundamentally changes the game state. The opponent isn't playing their game anymore. They're perpetually reacting to the warrior's threats.
So the opponent is always on the back foot.
Constantly. They're forced to spend their commands and GP on defense, on mitigating damage, on trying to recover their own dragons from hazards the warrior pressure might have forced them into. The warrior dictates the pace, dictates the terms of engagement. They seize the initiative and force the opponent into this desperate high-damage brawl, often before the opponent is ready for it.
But we keep coming back to the cost. That aggressive edge has a flip side, right? The vulnerability, low DG, hazard exposure.
Profound and immediate vulnerability. Yeah, it's the necessary balance. High HD output is almost always paid for with low Dragon Guard and this constant flirting with the hazard zone.
And this creates specific weaknesses. You mentioned GP vulnerability.
Critical weakness. Yeah. The Warrior Knight's own GP pool, their stamina, is under constant threat. Not just from enemy attacks eventually breaking through, but from their own faction's reckless approach. Those costly warrior hazard gambits we discussed, especially using a technique to retrieve a dragon, paying GP like a penalty stroke, directly trade the knight's own health for a chance at maintaining tempo.
And if those gambles fail,
the Zanator spent precious GP, potentially lost a key dragon to OB anyway, and gained absolutely nothing but a worse board state and less health. It's a fast track to defeat if the gambles don't pay off.
And then there's the risk of the dragons themselves misfiring, those shot-shaped rolls of 5 or 6.
Right. When a flaming slice or shank happens, which it inevitably will given their aggressive nature, they risk falling straight into the rough or water, or even triggering that OB check. And because the warrior strategy often relies on using those high-risk technique relics to try and save their crucial par 5s, well, a failed retrieval attempt can quickly cascade.
Cascade how?
You get into what you could call a hazard spiral. Your low DG dragon gets hit, ends up in water. You spend GP on a risky technique to get it back. You fail the roll, maybe it goes OB, and you're down the GP cost. Now you have fewer resources, fewer threats on board, and the opponent has breathing room. One failed gamble leads to multiple problems, and that can quickly snowball into a total irrecoverable collapse of your land zone presence.
It really does sound like that real-world golf analogy holds up perfectly. The long drive specialist, the power hitter.
Absolutely. The potential reward is huge crushing drives, massive HD numbers that just demoralize the opponent. It's intoxicating when it works.
But the risk
is equally extreme. That focus on raw power inherently increases the chances of those catastrophic mishits. The shank, the slice that's a crucial asset. Your best dragon spiraling into the hazard zone may be lost for good. It's the perfect TCG representation of that double-edged sword in golf. The sheer thrill of unleashing a 300-plus yard drive, followed by the immediate gut punch of realizing you snap-licked it straight out of bounds.
Okay, I think that gives us a really solid picture of the Warrior Legion. Let's try and wrap this up. We've really established their identity, haven't we? Crimson-Clad, all about aggression.
Definitely. Maximize HD above all else. Use gear and technique relics almost exclusively for raw output, power, and distance.
And relying heavily on those volatile, high-risk, high-reward flaming dragons to just violently dictate the tempo of the entire match.
Yeah, the Warrior Legion is probably Tee Legion's clearest example of that fundamental trade-off. Power versus consequence. Their ability to generate HD is frankly terrifying, but that force is always balanced by the constant threat of the hazard zone and the steep price they pay for their necessary gambles.
They thrive on creating chaos, but they're also incredibly vulnerable to it themselves.
They're often the first victims if their own chaotic plan backfires.
Yeah.
It makes for some incredibly dynamic edge-of-your-seat gameplay. Matches can genuinely pivot on a single dice roll, a successful hook that pushes for lethal, or a devastating shank that costs them the game.
So as we finish up, maybe a final thought for listeners to chew on, especially if they're thinking about which legion fits their style.
Yeah, here's something interesting to consider about the Warriors. Think about their structure. The most aggressive players, the Warrior Knights leading the charge, they rely almost entirely on their dragons, their forward units, for offense and board control.
Right. The knight stays back unless forced.
Exactly. But the instant that Lance Zone empties out the moment the dragons fall or get sent to hazards the knight, who is this unmoving anchor, the embodiment of your own stamina and GP, is left completely exposed and vulnerable.
Ah, the commander is suddenly defenseless.
Defenseless, unable to effectively fight back beyond chip damage, just waiting to be worn down. So the provocative question is forcing all that massive HD, achieving that explosive tempo early on, ultimately worth the inherent risk of that catastrophic board collapse? Where your leader, your core, is left wide open. It highlights this sort of reverse dynamic, the aggressive army protecting a vulnerable static commander. Understanding that trade-off, that's key to understanding the true cost and maybe the allure of walking the warrior's path in Tee Legion.